Hey everyone, welcome to $111,000 Bitcoin. It feels great. It feels great to, after slogging through the pain of the ups and downs over the years and ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs, finally for Bitcoin to be behaving exactly the way it should be behaving and doing exactly what it was designed to do when Bitcoin was invented. And that's kind of where we are right now. Bitcoin is doing exactly what it was intended to do and responding to the impacts of the marketplace for exactly the right reasons. As I covered in a video, there was the U.S. Treasury has been having issues selling its debt. That continues. The big drop in the stock market that happened I think it was yesterday, was due to another what's called a sort of a failed Treasury auction. Doesn't mean it failed. It means right at the end they had to raise interest rates in order to entice enough people to buy the debt, which basically means there was less appetite. More people were saying, why would I buy that? You're not going to pay it back. Or if you do pay it back, you're going to have to print so much money that you're going to have to pay me a higher interest rate than what you want to pay me in order to get me to buy this debt. Of course, I think anybody that's buying U.S. government debt is crazy, but, I don't know why you'd ever, lend money to a drunken sailor. But here we are, 37 trillion in debt, and people are still loaning us money that we can print out of thin air. It makes no sense. But anyway, so after another, quasi-failed Treasury auction earlier this week, Bitcoin did exactly what it was designed to do, which is it went up, stock market went down, clearly indicating that people are, understanding, as they should, that Bitcoin is a safe haven in an uncertain and chaotic world. Bitcoin is a safe place to preserve value for the long term because it cannot be manipulated by anyone. So, the number one question I have been getting over the last 2 days, one second, is, Joel, is it still a good time to buy Bitcoin? Well, my answer never changes, which is it's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin. But I posted this morning on Facebook that, look, if you asked me that question when Bitcoin was between $70,000 and $90,000, I would have said, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy as much as you can. Like, it's down for no good reason. Buy as much as you can. Even if you can't hold it that long. Like, I still think it's a asymmetric bet, meaning the reward significantly outweighs the risk at, between 70 and 90,000. Between 90,000 and 110,000, I posted, look, between $70,000 and $90,000, it's still a good time to buy Bitcoin, but you got to be willing to hold it for at least a year or two, because there's ups and downs, and you don't want to be potentially in a situation where you're stuck selling Bitcoin that is down from the price you paid for it. And so that's what I posted for between 90,000 and 110,000. What I posted is, if it's above 110,000, which it is right now at 111,000, it's still a good time to buy Bitcoin, but you need to be able to hold it for 3 or 4 years. Now, do I think it's going to be down significantly in much of the next 3 or 4 years? No, but you got to, we don't play risky games where we're like, hey, I'm definitely going to need this money in a year or 2 or 3, and, or whatever, a year or 2, and then you're risking selling it when it's a price lower than today, which again, I don't think is going to happen. And if it does happen, I think it'll be short-lived, but we just don't know the future. So there's no reason to risk that. Okay. I also posted this morning, some of this I'm just recapping so you have it in video form in addition to written form in case you prefer video. I posted another way of answering the question. So this way of answering the question is, yes, now is still a good time to buy Bitcoin. It's just, above $110,000, you got to understand that you've got to be willing to hold it for 3 or 4 years because, it could go up and down in the next 1 or 2 years. And who knows? I think it's going to be up, but, nobody knows. At least nobody knows in the near term, even if it's relatively certain in the long term. All right, the other thing I posted is a number of people have asked me, they've said, well, Joel, one person posted in response to a comment that, look, I've been trying to free up money from a 401k or an IRA or a Roth IRA or whatever it is. I've been trying to free up this money for more than a month now. Bitcoin was in the 80,000s when I tried to free up the money. Here it is a month or two later. Finally, the money shows up, broken loose from the broken financial system. And now it's available to buy Bitcoin. And here we are at $111,000. Do you still buy it? And lots of people, I've probably had 20 people in the last 2 days ask me, Joel, is it still a good time to buy Bitcoin? Is it still a good time to buy Bitcoin? So another way of answering that question is yes. So the first way is yes, but you need to be able to hold it for 3 or 4 years. Another way of answering that question is yes, because it is your least worst option. Here's what I mean by least worst. The best time to buy Bitcoin is when it's at a multi-year low, it's down and out, nobody's talking about it, everybody assumes Bitcoin is dead, and that's the best time to buy Bitcoin. But you only get those opportunities, every 2 or 3 years, or every 4 years, really. And you can't predict when they're going to happen, and you can't predict if Bitcoin will ever be lower than today's price. It could zoom up to 220,000 and then drop to 120,000, and the lowest it ever goes is 9,000 higher than today. So it's possible that if you wait for a multi-year low, that the lowest low you ever get is a price that's higher than today. So, there's no way to count on that. But the best time is in a multi-year low, which basically nobody wants to buy Bitcoin when it's in a multi-year low because, nobody wants to buy any financial asset when it's massively on sale because they're scared. They're afraid it's going to go away. They're afraid it's going to die. They're afraid it's never coming back, all this sort of stuff. But the best time to buy any asset is when it's massively on sale. The second best time is when it's coming off of being massively on sale. It's starting to march up, but it's still quite low. The third best time is when it's headed south, when it's going down, when people are worried. They don't know where the bottom is. It's in a price correction. The fourth best time to buy Bitcoin is when it's going up off of a price correction. That may not be a multi-year low, but it's still lower. Which leaves the fifth best time to buy it is when it's rocketing up, like the last 2 days. The problem with that being the fifth best time is the worst time is to not buy it at all. So if the answer was that now is not a good time to buy Bitcoin, then you have a problem, which is, if you don't buy it now, then you're in category 6, which is you're not buying it at all. Because people, if you don't buy it now, what are you going to do? You're going to sit on it? Are you going to buy it at 120? Are you going to buy it at 130, 140? Are you going to buy it when it corrects 5%, when it's down 10%? What about 15%? Nobody knows. Nobody has any good answers to those questions that if you don't buy it now, when are you going to buy it? And what everybody thinks is, I'll buy it when it's cheaper. But then they have no idea what cheaper means. And then when cheaper comes, they freak out because it's down for a reason. And they're like, oh no, maybe it has a problem. Maybe something's wrong with Bitcoin. Maybe it's down 10% or 20% for a reason. Maybe it's going to drop further. So there's just no good answer to the question of, is now a good time to buy Bitcoin? The answer is yes, because there's no good answer to the question no. Because if you say, no, it's not a good time to buy Bitcoin, then it begs the question, well, when is a good time to buy Bitcoin? And the answer is nobody knows because you can't time the market. And if you can't time the market, then it's impossible to know when a good time or a bad time is. You just don't know. So yes, I think it's a good time to buy Bitcoin because the alternative is to not buy Bitcoin. And you don't have the opportunity right now to buy it at a multi-year low. It's not at a multi-year low, so that's not one of the options. It's not coming off of a multi-year low, so that's not one of the options. It's not in a massive price or even a moderate price correction right now because we're at all-time highs, so that's not an option. And it's not just recovering from a big price correction. I guess you could argue it sort of is. Bitcoin was down 33%, I don't know, in the last month or two or whenever it was. So you could kind of argue that we're in category 4, which is recovering from a price correction. But again, it's not like today it's recovering and it's barely above the low. The most recent low was 74,000 something a month or two back. It's not like you're buying it at 80 or 90 or even 100. We're up here at 111. So the least worst option is to buy it because the next option is to not buy it. And there's no good option that involves buying it at some other time because that involves timing the market and we don't know the future. We don't know the prices. And inevitably, when it's a good time to buy, you won't want to buy because it'll be scary. And, it is what it is. So if somebody showed up today and gave me $10,000 or $100,000, actually, interestingly enough, I won't go into all the details, but $14,000 is freeing up literally today. Someone just called me right before this and said, hey, we have a refund check for long story, something business related. We have a refund check for $14,000. What do you want me to do with it? Literally, they called me right before this call. And I said, go deposit it at Trustmark as fast as you can so that I can suck it out of there as fast as I can and buy Bitcoin. Literally, that was the conversation I had right before this one was, so they got in their car while we were on the phone so they could drive to Trustmark, so they could deposit that money, so that I can suck it into Coinbase and buy Bitcoin using Coinbase Advanced with the lowest possible fees, which is exactly what's going to happen the very second I get my hands on that money at Trustmark. And hopefully they won't have a, multi-day hold or something like that. I'm hoping they don't. So anyway, that's what's going to happen. That money is going to buy Bitcoin at $111,000. I'm going to buy $14,000 of Bitcoin because that money became available today. And I am going to buy Bitcoin literally the moment I can get that money out of Trustmark and into Bitcoin, I will do that. If they put a 1-day hold on it, it'll be 1 day. If they put a 3-day hold on it, it'll be 3 days. If they don't let me buy it until 7 days, guess what? 7 days from now, no matter what the price of Bitcoin is, I don't care if it's 120, I don't care if it's 130, I don't care if it's back down to 95. Whenever I can get that money out of Trustmark, it will immediately, that $14,000 will immediately be used to buy Bitcoin at any price. Like, doesn't matter what the price is. I'm just going to hit buy Bitcoin. I forgot I had a good example. I didn't have a good example until, 30 minutes ago. But now I have a good example. So what would I do if $14,000 dropped out of the sky like it did, 30 minutes ago? I mean, I guess I knew it was coming because I knew I was going to get this refund at some point. I just had no idea when. It could have been any time in the last 2 months. That would have been nice a month ago when Bitcoin was in the 80,000s. But guess what? The refund didn't show up a month ago when it was in the 80,000s. It showed up today at $111,000. So guess what? I buy Bitcoin at $111,000 because there is no good option. There is no other good option other than to buy Bitcoin today. Even with dollar cost averaging, which is buying the same amount of Bitcoin every week, typically it's done weekly. Even if somebody said, hey, dollar cost average that $14,000, my question is, okay, how? Yeah, I mean, am I doing 1,000 a week over 14 weeks? Am I doing 7,000 a week over 2 weeks? Am I doing 500 a week over 14 weeks? Like, the problem is, how am I dollar cost averaging that? How long am I dollar cost averaging? Nobody knows. Nobody has an answer to that question. That's why I just buy Bitcoin. It's the only thing that seems to really work. So anyway, so I'm going to buy $111,000 Bitcoin as soon as Trustmark will let me, or whatever the price happens to be, as soon as Trustmark gives me access to my own money, which obviously they always put holds on checks and stuff like that. Anyway, so let's see what else. So the U.S. government has serious problems right now because people are not flocking to the U.S. Treasury bills, U.S. government debt as a safe haven. They are flocking instead to gold and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is way better than gold. I think most of the run-up that gold is going to have already happened with gold at 3,300 an ounce or whatever it's at. I think the vast majority of the, obviously, upside of Bitcoin is ahead of it. So at some point, we will get a significant Bitcoin repricing. So what do I mean repricing? At some point, Bitcoin will very rapidly go from whatever price it's at to a new price. A new price that reflects the fact that the world has woken up and understands Bitcoin's value. Now, if somebody said, hey, what does that maybe look like? It probably looks like Bitcoin going from 110,000 to 170,000 or 220,000 or, I don't know, 168,000, maybe 150,000. I don't know, somewhere between 150,000 and 220,000, like really fast. Now, is that tomorrow? Is that 5 days from now? Is that 5 months from now? Does it take 5 years? Nobody knows. Literally nobody knows. But all I know is at some point, just like the world recognized over the last 2 days that, wow, failed U.S. government treasury auction. Failed, again, in relative terms. I'm not saying nobody bought the debt. I'm just saying the government was not able to sell the debt they wanted to sell at the interest rate and they wanted to sell it at, and everybody freaked out because it was like, wow, nobody's buying this, or people are not buying this with the same appetite they had before. So at some point there will be things that really throw the whole system for a loop, and that will result in a significant repricing event, meaning just like gold very quickly went from $2,500 an ounce to $3,300 an ounce, an $800 price move in the price of gold, or maybe it was even more than that. I think it was like $2,300 up to $3,300, $1,000 price move in the price of gold, which is represented, I don't know, $5 or $8 trillion in the price of gold. It was some ridiculously large amount, and that happened relatively quickly. Relatively quickly. So I think the same is in store for Bitcoin, that we're going to get a pretty significant repricing where people just recategorize Bitcoin in there as, hey, this is not a sort of a risky niche asset. This is a major world currency and a major digital asset and a digital store of value. And as soon as that is reflected, as soon as that is understood by the marketplace, there will be a significant repricing event. So all that really matters, in my opinion, is, well, how much Bitcoin do you own before that happens? Just like I spent all last year asking people, hey, at some point, Bitcoin's going to break out of this range from 55,000 to 70,000. And the question I was always asking people is, how much Bitcoin are you going to own when we officially leave the $55,000 to $70,000 price range behind? Now, we stayed in that range, 55,000 to 70,000, almost the entirety of 7.5 months. From the middle of March to the end of October last year, Bitcoin was almost entirely between 55,000 and 70,000. And the question I was always asking people is, hey, at some point we're going to sort of reprice into the six figures. How much Bitcoin are you going to own when that happens? Well, here we are. We have repriced into the six figures. Now the question is, when do we reprice in the, hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of just above $100,000? So at what point does Bitcoin become a $200,000 to $300,000 asset instead of a $100,000 per coin asset? That's going to happen at some point. I can't tell you if it's the next week or two, the next year or two. I don't know. I don't think it's going to take more than 5 years, but literally nobody knows. The question is, how much Bitcoin are you going to own when that happens? That's the question. So hopefully this is helpful. I know for those of you who do not have 100% of your liquid assets in Bitcoin like I do, I know it's stressful because you're asking yourself, should I put more in? And wow, it's so expensive. And Joel's telling me that there's 4 better times to invest in Bitcoin than when it's on a rocket ride up. But that number 5, which is where we are on a rocket ride up, is still better than not investing in Bitcoin. So I understand it's hard, but guess what? This journey is hard. It's just hard. If it was easy, everybody in the world would have adopted Bitcoin. It's hard because it's hard to understand Bitcoin, and the vast majority of the world does not understand Bitcoin. It's hard to invest in a volatile asset that goes up and down on its way up because it means you got to hold it when it's down, and that's hard. So there's a lot of hard things about Bitcoin, and one of them is Bitcoin at $111,000, and you trying to decide, do you invest more in Bitcoin? It's your money. I'm not a financial advisor, not a legal advisor, not a tax advisor, not an accounting advisor. I am not any sort of professional advisor. Everything I share is just my random opinion for your amusement and otherwise value. That's it. So if it were me, and it is me, because I just got $14,000 freed up all of 30 minutes ago, then what do? I buy Bitcoin. What did I do back when I felt the exact same way, when Bitcoin was rocketing past $11,000 instead of $111,000? What did I do at $11,000? I bought Bitcoin. What did I do when Bitcoin was setting all-time highs? Back in 2021, I bought Bitcoin. What was I doing when it was at the depths of the bear market in 2022? I was buying Bitcoin. And what did I do when it was setting records in 2024, when it crossed $74,000 for the first time in 2024? I was also buying Bitcoin. I was buying it all the time with as much assets as I can break loose. And so I bought every top. I bought every bottom. I bought everything in between, because over time, my comfort level with Bitcoin has gotten higher and higher and higher. And eventually it got high enough that I decided the appropriate allocation for me was 100% of my liquid assets. Now, Rachel manages an emergency fund that I do not have legal access to on purpose because I have a very high risk tolerance. So when I say 100%, that is only of the assets that I own or control of our assets, which is, the lion's share. It is the vast majority of those assets, but it's not all of them, because I do not count the assets that are exclusively under Rachel's control, because they're not mine. and I have no legal right over them on purpose. That way, our family is still going to be able to buy groceries, even if I'm wrong about all this. But the assets I possibly could invest in Bitcoin are 100% invested in Bitcoin, and they were this morning 100% invested in Bitcoin. As of 30 minutes ago, I found out there's $14,000 that's not in Bitcoin that just showed up. So guess what? I'm just below 100% invested because that $14,000 showed up. So tomorrow, if Trustmark will let me, I will be back to 100% fully invested in Bitcoin with some $111,000 Bitcoin to get that $14,000 out of US dollars. So hopefully all this is helpful. Hit me with any questions. I love doing videos. I love being your local Bitcoin Sherpa and trying to help you as much as I can. And I understand this journey is hard. Things that are worth doing are hard. But it's worth it. It's worth it in the long run. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.